Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this informal meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee, today, Thursday, the 27th of May, 2021. My name is Robin Cook. I'm the chairman of this committee. I'll give a little bit of detail about the informal nature of the meeting in a moment when I've done a little bit of housekeeping. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Council has had to put in place measures to enable the Council's decision-making processes to continue whilst keeping safe members of the public, councillors and council staff in accordance with the government's guidance on social distancing. As the regulations for allowing decisions to be made at committee meetings from remote locations have now expired, at the annual meeting of a council on the 4th of May 2021, it was agreed that all council meetings that are not executive in nature will continue to be held virtually from the 7th of May 2021 until such time as social distancing requirements are removed, and that's currently scheduled to be lifted on the 21st of June 2021. This committee will continue to meet remotely and make a minded to resolution with an officer delegated to make the formal decision. The officer will make their decision immediately after the committee has voted on each item and will give reasons if their decision differs from the minded to resolution. Today, we're looking at discussing a response to Hampshire County Council regarding the planning application consultation from Dorset Council on the proposed development of a quarry at Purple Haze. This is why this meeting was put in between our regular schedule as an informal meeting, because it's a slight departure from the regular planning meetings that I know you're all used to. We're not looking at a planning application, but we're looking at a response and commenting thereon. Okay, now before I go any further, what I want to do is hold a roll call. And before I do that, a little bit of clarification. On the front sheet of the agenda, under the membership list, Councillor David Walsh is listed as a member of this committee. Well, I think as you all know by now, Councillor David Walsh is actually the portfolio holder for planning. So apologies for that, David, that your name appeared there. I know you attend the meetings, but you take no part in the discussion or any voting thereon. So I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Now the roll call. Vice Chairman, Councillor John Worth.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Shane Bartlett.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Dave Bolwell.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Alex Brenton. Apologies given on that one. Councillor Kelvin Clayton.
I'm here, Chair.
Councillor Jean Dunseith.
I'm here, Chairman.
Councillor Mike Dyer.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Sherry Jesperson.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Mary Penfold.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Belinda Rideout.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor David Took.
Present, Chairman.
That's everybody bar Alex Brenton, and I think she's sent her apologies. We'll find out when we get to that on the agenda. And then the officers attending today are Emma MacDonald, who's the Minerals and Waste Planning Manager, Trevor Badley, the Lead Project Officer for Minerals and Waste, Mike Garrity, Head of Planning, Economic Growth and Infrastructure, Phil Crowther from Legal Services, Hannah Massey, who's joining us as a legal observer, Elaine Tibble, who's the Senior Democratic Services Officer, and doing the hard work behind the scenes, producing this meeting, are George Dare and Megan Rochester. I think I've covered everybody satisfactorily there. Can I just remind everybody that to keep their cameras off and their microphones on mute unless they wish to speak, and would they indicate if they wish to speak in the chat bar on the screen, and I will pick that up. And do remember that the chat bar is to be used for procedural purposes only. So I hope you've made a note of that, but I'm sure, again, you're all used to it by now. I think we're about 12 months down the line of using this system, and I think we just about got used to it, but hopefully that will work quite well. So if we can move on to the agenda proper. Thank you. Item 1, apologies.
Thank you. We just have the one apology from Councillor Alex Brenton.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. Anybody got any declarations of interest on this one? Okay, well, if anything crops up during the course of a discussion, then okay, we'll do so, make it known. 3, any public participation other than that we know about? No.
No.
No. Okay. So item 4, we come to the substantive item, the one item on the agenda today, which is the Dorset Council response to consultation on the proposed quarry development at Purple Haze, Verwood. And the procedure for this will be that there will be a presentation by Trevor Badley, first of all, and then we've got one speaker who we'll hear from following that presentation. If there are any responses then from the officer or officers, they can be given at the time. Following that, we will then open it up, first of all, to members' questions for points of clarity, and then move into debate, and then come to our minded to decision making later in the meeting. So I think that's clarified it. So on that basis, if you're all happy, I'll hand over to Trevor with his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. My colleagues in the background have very kindly offered to help me out with the three slides, the 3 maps that we'll be using. So if I could start, please, with if I could have the first slide, which is figure 1, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. Right, I will do my best to present the application that Hampshire have consulted us on briefly, and then explain the response that we are recommending. But to begin with a brief background on the Purple Haze site. The area of land known as Purple Haze, you can see it there on that map outlined in red. To the top left-hand corner, the northwest is Verwood, so it sits in close proximity to Verwood. Down in the bottom right, you can see where the B3081, the road linking Verwood to the A31, links into the A31. So it shows you the site in its context. It is entirely within Hampshire. That blue line that kind of runs through the middle of the plan in front of you is the Dorset-Hampshire boundary. So it is entirely within Hampshire. Hampshire are the determining authority, but part of the boundary of the site is actually on the boundary with Dorset. The other points to mention here briefly is Purple Haze. The site is an allocation, a formal allocation in Hampshire, in Hampshire's minerals and waste plan. It is allocated for aggregates for mineral sand extraction. It is the application. This has been in the pipeline for quite a long time, but the application, the formal application, was submitted to Hampshire in February of this year and went out to consultation in March, and we are now just finalising our response. Moving on, if I could get the second slide up, please. Thank you. The applicants are Grundon Sand and Gravel. They are proposing to extract approximately 4.5 million tonnes over 20 to 25 years, mostly sand, some gravel, at the rate of about 150,000 to 200,000 tonnes per annum, which will generate approximately 90 movements. That's 45 lorries in and 45 out on a daily basis. The majority of these will run between the A31 and the site. Very few would be expected to actually head up through Verwood and beyond. The main markets for this proposal, should it be ultimately approved, will be to the south, will be in Dorset, Bournemouth, Christchurch, and so on. The quarry will be worked in 21 phases, small separate phases, which are shown on this plan. Beginning with the area where the processing plant is there, kind of in the middle of the site. It's outlined. It's in white, and working will move in a counterclockwise direction, going kind of northwest and then heading back southeast and coming back around to the actual plant itself. The access road you can see there leading off the B3081 in a kind of a double curve into the processing plant area. That's the proposed access. And if I could have the third slide, please. And this is just an indication of the proposed restoration, which will be to a mixture is proposed to be a mixture of heathland, gorse, woodland, and some water bodies there in the south of the site. The allocation in Hampshire's plan does refer to importation of waste, but the proposal before us, well, the proposal that has been submitted to Hampshire does not propose any importation of waste, whether inert waste or otherwise. It will be restored at what's known at a lower level, so it will be a form of a valley almost. Okay, thank you. I will just quickly run through then the issues concerning our response. Last year, Hampshire carried out a scoping consultation to establish what needed to be covered by the environmental impact assessment that has accompanied this application. Dorset did respond to that. Dorset Council did respond, and we picked out 9 key issues which we thought should be needed to be covered, including ecology, hydrology, highways, recreational impacts, soils, cultural heritage, landscape and visual, human health or amenity, and climate change. So that's what was returned to Hampshire last year. The environmental impact assessment has been carried out. The whole application has been submitted, and then having reviewed the documents and some of the responses that were appearing on Hampshire's website, the key issues that I felt was most appropriate, most important, that needed to be looked at in detail was particularly hydrology and hydrogeology and flooding. So that's basically surface water coming off the site and groundwater coming off the site, ecology, recreational issues, and highways or traffic issues. So looking at hydrology first, the key points to make here is the Environment Agency is the body that would normally comment on hydrology and hydrogeology issues, as most councils don't have a hydrologist on their staff. And they have responded already to this consultation, and they have lodged an objection, noting that the applicant essentially has not provided enough information to clearly explain what impacts are likely and whether these impacts can be properly mitigated. So that's a standing objection that will need to be dealt with by the applicant. Hampshire's local flood team, lead local flood assessment team authority, they have not issued a formal objection, but they have asked for further information. So they are also waiting to get further information. I sought advice from our own flood management team, Dorset Council's flood management team, and they have, having looked at the documents available, they are satisfied that, if you like, the right questions are being asked, the right comments are being made, and more information is needed. So I'm satisfied that in terms of hydrology, more work needs to be done to demonstrate that the issues have been properly investigated and can be mitigated. So more work is needed there. Ecology is probably the biggest issue that comes out when looking at the impacts of this site. Appendix 1 of this report contains quite a detailed response from Dorset Council's natural environment team, which I certainly won't go through at this stage, but they have essentially fundamental concerns which pick up many of the issues that the other issues that I've looked at separately in this report. But again, as I said, I won't go through it in detail, but they pick out 6 bullet points, which I will mention briefly. So the acceptability of development on this site is questioned, given the importance of this site. The temporary loss of land, which is linked to sites which have international ecological designations and not properly compensated for. The issue of recreational displacement, which I will come to shortly. Hydrology, particularly on Ebb Lake Bog, which I should have mentioned when I was looking at the overall map of this site. Ebb Lake Bog lies to the west of the site and is a triple SI and a special protection area, and is fed by water flowing off the site. So that is of particular importance, how that will be impacted. So the hydrological impact on Ebb Lake Bog. The baseline that was used for the ecological assessment did not take into account the work of the Forestry Commission and the Forest Design Plan, and the restoration plans have been questioned by a number of bodies. So there's fundamental issues with regard to ecology. Then recreational use or recreational displacement is a key issue as well. So the Purple Haze site is used for recreational purposes. Informal recreation, quite a number of people use it. The assessment that was submitted with the planning application says that they don't expect that there will be any issues. However, they have not supplied any empirical evidence to demonstrate that there will be no issues. So there is that certainly needs to be addressed. I have consulted with colleagues in rights of way who are satisfied that there will be no should people be displaced, or when people are displaced off the Purple Haze site, they don't expect any particular impacts on rights of way managed by Dorset Council. But I have spoken to the Moores Valley Country Park team, and they have identified a number of points that they are not happy with, and further assessment, further discussion needs to be had. So flagging up recreational displacement, both affecting the ecology and designated sites around the proposed Purple Haze site, and also affecting recreational facilities in existence around the site. Further work is needed on that. It has not been satisfactorily assessed. And then quite briefly at the end, the highways issue. As I've said already, the assessment, the projection, if you like, of highway impacts is looking at 90 movements, 45 in and 45 out a day. The projections done by the highway consultancy, they seem satisfied that with certain improvements to be made to the road system, that the B3081 is capable of taking this level of traffic. I consulted our highways team, and they said that they had no comments to make. Therefore, I'm not making any further comments. So in conclusion, my recommendation is that Dorset Council do return an objection to Hampshire County Council on the detail of this application, saying that there are a number of key areas, key issues where assessment has not been adequate or robust enough, and further work is necessary, followed by further consultation. And that's it in a nutshell, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Trevor, for that. I think you've covered that fairly well. As I say, it's a very detailed report, and hopefully members have had a chance to read it in more detail as well. So, but thank you for that. Okay, now moving on, we've got, as I said, we've got one speaker, and that's Councillor Spencer Flower, who's one of the Verwood Ward members, one of 3 Verwood Ward members. And Councillor Flower, I know he's here this morning, and we were going to allow him a little bit of extra time, probably about 5 or 6 minutes, as opposed to the normal 3 minutes, which I've agreed to do. So when you're ready, over to you, Councillor Flower.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As you rightly say, thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the committee this morning. regarding the Dorset Council's response to the Hampshire County Council consultation on the Grundon planning application for mineral extraction just a few hundred yards over the Dorset-Hampshire border, close to the town of Verwood. I'm here this morning representing Councillor Tony Coombs, Simon Gibson and myself as the 3 Dorset councillors representing the Verwood ward. I need to make absolutely clear that mineral extraction at this location will have a lasting and damaging impact on the lives of Verwood residents. During the initial Hampshire County Council consultation, there was reference being made to quote that this was a remote location. Such an ill-informed comment should not go unanswered, and it hasn't. I speak for my colleagues in Verwood. We are outraged by that remark, and also that this application has come forward for approval. This location is adjacent to Verwood with a population of over 14,700 residents, and Moores Valley Country Park, which attracts over 1 million visitors each year. Remote? We don't think so. We welcome the officer's suggested response to the consultation, but we're not sure the basic objection is strong enough. I refer specifically to the impact of the hydrology and the suggested measures to mitigate the need, and I think the needs to be strengthened. During the public inquiry some 9 years ago, which I attended and spoke on 2 occasions, it was noted by the planning inspector that a number of environment concerns would have to be dealt with at the planning application stage. Despite the inclusion of Purple Haze site remaining in the minerals and waste plan, the assumption was that permission would not be granted unless the applicant could offer an absolute assurance there would be no negative impact on the integrity of the European protected sites. There are continuing concerns of the detrimental impact on the hydrology, which would be very damaging to the delicate ecosystem of the internationally designated Ebb Lake Bog, which we know has been mentioned, a triple SI, Ramsar, SPA, SAC site, currently, which is 520 metres away from the Purple Haze site. We were advised that the mineral are very similar to the Blue Haze, which is across the road, coming from the same ancient riverbed. These would be similarly poor quality and would require on-site washing before being used for the stated purpose. Should the soft sand be taken off-site without washing, it can only really be used suitable for landscaping rather than the building industry use as defined in the plan, not for construction. This therefore raises serious concerns about how the contractor could offer an absolute guarantee against any adverse impact on the hydrology of the immediate area and Ebb Lake Bog. Mitigation of harm will simply will not do, and case law supports this. We are aware that 2 key issues were deferred to the planning process, namely the question of whether the mineral was above or below the water table, and should the mineral require site washing, with what mitigation will be introduced to ensure the integrity of the acid mire, that is of Ebb Lake Bog, and remain unaffected. I understand that only 3 borehole samples have been taken. Purple Haze site stretches, as you've seen from the diagram, around 3 miles along the B3081. It has to be seen as a token gesture, surely, and entirely inadequate to establish a clear understanding of this vitally important matter. This will require the protection of water quality and recharge to the underlying aquifer, groundwater and surface water. We can find no evidence that the application takes any mitigation into account. Given the environmental sensitivities of the location, there must surely be a strong and compelling case for the precautionary principle to be rigorously applied. In addition to the disruption of the groundwater hydrology, there's also an issue of sediment. Practical experience of this problem has been found it's not possible to prevent sediment runoff from mineral landfill sites, as the operation creates much bare ground that is readily erodable, and intense rainfall events invariably occur and overwhelm sediment capture measures, and particularly if they're not maintained adequately. There is also a serious concern about the impact caused by silica dust, which is harmful when inhaled into your lungs. It's 100 times smaller than a grain of sand, and you can breathe it in without knowing. And exposure to silica dust can lead to the development of a variety of illnesses, including lung cancers and kidney disease and various other issues that are quite life-threatening. This is a particularly important consideration given the close proximity of Moores Valley Country Park and a large housing development on the eastern border of Verwood. We're reassured by the reference in the report to the CJEA judgment in the case of People Over Wind, which established a precedent that mitigation cannot be taken into account when considering the screening tests for likely significant effects. To take account of mitigation affects the screening stage presupposes that there will likely be significant effect on the European sites. Therefore, there's a requirement for an appropriate assessment to be carried out by the competent authority. However, when the assessment is carried out, the court said that the AA may not have any gaps and must contain complete, precise, definitive findings and conclusions capable of removing all reasonable doubt as to the effect of the proposed works. Furthermore, it throws into question the legality of many strategic mitigation systems that have been put in place to protect sites such as Dorset Heathlands. We are by no means experts in this, but looking at the Ecology by Design scoping report, there seems to be a wide range of issues, and to suddenly conclude there is not likely significant impact seems a huge stretch to us on such an enormous scale, based as it is on a massive assumption which lacks any substantive justification based on any form of scientific analysis. We fail to see that bullet point 10 under development considerations of Hampshire Mineral and Waste Plan 2013 has been acknowledged sufficiently within the submission, being the protection of the immunity of Verwood residents. Bullet point 4 of said plan also has not sufficiently addressed, has also not been sufficiently addressed. Where is the reassurance of the protection and enhancement of amenities as required to be compliant with the development plan? This application is a weak submission that is liable to legal challenge. It's failed to adequately address the measures required by the inspector at examination stage and the matters needed to be considered in the Hampshire Minerals and Waste Plan 2013. The 3 Verwood ward councillors remain entirely unconvinced that suitable environment impact mitigation applying the precautionary principle would be introduced to protect the integrity of the Eblake Bog. We therefore ask that the committee support the recommendations to object to this planning application for the extraction of minerals at this site, known as Purple Haze, for the reasons set out above, and to strengthen the reasons to include an absolute assurance regarding that there being no harm to the ecology of the area. Mitigation can only be interpreted as a reduction in harm and not as a safeguard against harm. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flower, for that very detailed response. Before we move on, does any officer want to respond to anything that's in Councillor Flower's statement? No, I take that as a no.
Sorry, Chairman. Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's noted what Councillor Flower has said. I think there's quite a lot of common ground there between what the officer's report has said. I would I'll leave it open to debate before commenting further on the request that was put forward to actually strengthen the wording, as I'd be interested to hear the views of the committee members before we take any further steps in that regard. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that, Mike. We'll bear that in mind. Okay, well, before we move on, can I just remind members that now we're not looking at the planning application per se. That's a matter for Hampshire County Council to decide. What we are here to discuss, and we've been asked to support the Dorset Council consultation paper on this proposed development. That's the key issue, not to debate the legitimacy of the planning application. I hope I make that one quite clear to members. So having said that, I'm going to start with my list of questions, first of all, for clarity from members. The first one I've got, if it's a question, David Took, Councillor David Took.
Thank you, Chairman. Couple of observations and a question. The first observation is access to Moors Valley off the B3081. Local people in Verwood and in Alderholt quite often will use a couple of the entrances off the B3081 to park up where there are car parks provided and walk into the Moors Valley Country Park and Ashley Heath area for a good long walk with a dog or with the children. And this will, of course, cut right through that. So there would need to be some provision, I think, for access to Moors Valley as an ongoing facility. The other thing I want to make, and this is really the question, is right in the middle of the site. If we look at the map that we've got on the slide in front of us, just by the trig point at 54 metres, there is a tumulus, which is actually a bowl barrow, Bronze Age bowl barrow, of which there is very little information on Hampshire HER. It's never really been investigated. And is there going to be, if this does go ahead, is there going to be an archaeological investigation into that bowl barrow and potential others? There's a bit of a cemetery feel to this area with lots of Bronze Age barrows, and this would be an extremely good opportunity for some of these to be explored where they have not previously been. Is that something that is in Hampshire's report, or is that something we can ask them about further? Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Councillor Took. Who would like to respond to that?
I'll speak briefly first, Chairman, if that's okay.
Fine. Yeah.
I did notice, as Mike mentioned, the site is a Hampshire application, so it will be up to Hampshire to decide exactly how they address this issue of dealing with the tumulus. I have had a very brief look at the response to the application from the Hampshire county archaeologist, in which he refers to the fact that there are tumuli obviously within the site, and he seems, as I recall, quite I think there is discussion that this will be, as Councillor Took says, an opportunity to investigate some of these tumuli in more detail. There's questions raised as to whether all of the tumuli mentioned really are tumuli, so this will be an opportunity to investigate them. But so yes, there is that will be taken should Hampshire decide to take that approach, but that is obviously up to Hampshire. With regard to the comment about parking in the informal car parks off the B3081 and travelling through Purple Haze into Moors Valley, this is, I believe, picked up in the assessment that was done by the applicant, and their perhaps rather glib statement that there will be no problems. As you would recall, I mentioned that the site will be worked in 21 smallish phases, and I may not have mentioned, but behind the working, the small phases will be restored as working goes around. And I think the applicants have in mind that even if a path has to be temporarily blocked or diverted, there will be other options to move people through the site. What is not clear, and as I said, doesn't seem to have been empirically addressed by surveys on the ground, is whether people are going to actually behave in the way that the applicants would like them to. It may be that if they see some quarrying is going on, they will just avoid the site altogether and go somewhere else. So hence in my report I said further assessment was necessary.
Thank you very
much. Does that
address
the question? Thank you very much.
I think it does. I'd simply like to add that I would support what Councillor Flower said earlier, but thank you for answering those questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is Councillor Sherry Jesperson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a brief question. Before I ask my question, can I just commend Councillor Flower. That was a really most helpful and thorough presentation to the committee. Thank you very much for that. The site is in the Hampshire's Mineral and Waste Plan 2013. But one of our own ecology experts, as I've understood it, have indicated an objection to the acceptability of the site. So my question is there any room, any scope for an objection in principle to development of this site, or is the principle already established?
Okay, who would like to come back on that one?
Yes, sorry. I can bring Trevor in a second if that helps, but it's a tricky one because it's actually an allocated site in a statutory development plan. It would have been tested through the examination process, so it's now a formal allocation. So the issue, therefore, is whether or not anything has fundamentally changed since that plan was adopted that could question whether or not there was a change in circumstance that would undermine that allocation. So from the point of view of Hampshire County Council, they would have to consider this application as an allocated site, and they would have to have very good reason for actually deviating from the issue of principle if they were going to refuse it on a matter of principle, because to do so would expose them to a risk of appeal and costs awarded against them if there were no sound reasons for doing so. So it is an issue that I think can be put to Hampshire. Are they fully satisfied that the circumstances remain the same as when the plan was adopted as to now, in terms of their determination of that application? But that would be the test that would be before them. Which is why I suppose our response has focused principally on the matter of the detail of the application rather than the question of principle.
Thank you very much. I understand that absolutely. It's very helpful. I would like, Mr. Chairman, if it's appropriate when we get to discussion, to come back to the question of principle on the grounds of sometimes it's helpful to provide planning officers with as much ammunition as possible, and they will decide whether or not they can use it. So we might come back to that. Thank you.
Indeed. I'll bear that in mind. Thank you. Okay, thanks. Right, next on my list is Councillor Jean Dunseith. Hello, Jean.
Hello. Hi. My question is about the exactly where Eblake Bog is, because it does mention that surface water could drain westwards, and I know it is westwards, but I don't know exactly where it is on this map.
Can we indicate on the slide? I know it's rather small, but
yes, of course. My apologies, Chairman, because I should have covered this when I looked at this slide. The area outlined in red obviously is the Purple Haze boundary, and to the west of that, you see there's like a number 07, and then over that number 07, there's a green blob. The green blob is the Eblake Bog SSSI. But as has been mentioned by Councillor Flower, it is also a special protection area, a special area of conservation, and it is very highly protected. And it does, as I understand it, water does flow off the Purple Haze site and feed the bog. So it is critical that should that site be developed, that the hydrology, they basically get it right.
And it does, of course, it straddles both the county boundaries there, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's mostly within Hampshire, but there's a bit of it extends into Dorset, yes.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Thank you. Happy with that, Jean? Yeah, good. Right, next on the list.
Yes, thank you, Robin. Yes, thank you.
It's Councillor Calvin Clayton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My apology, I don't know the area at all. I've tried to go through the report, but I can't find an answer to my question. Would it be possible to have a bit more description of the actual habitat of this area. I've looked on the map and part of it's described as forest, part heath. Is it forest, heathland, woodland? Just so I've got some picture of what is being, dare one say, destroyed here.
Trevor, you're going to respond?
I can have a go, Chairman. I'm not an ecologist, so I'm not an expert to give you an answer, Councillor, but I have been to this site. Moores Valley obviously is to the west. The Purple Haze area is, as I understand it, is lands owned by Summerley Estate, but leased by the Forestry Commission, and as I understand it, it is managed as forestry plantation. So it is a number of years since I've been there, but most of it, from memory, is conifer woodland. But I believe that there are areas of heathland and other vegetation types in there. If anyone knows the area better, then I would be very happy if you know, I stand to be corrected, but that is my memory of it.
Can I answer that, Robin? David Took.
David Took. Yes, okay, David. Yeah, because you're fairly local to that area, so perhaps you would be happy to respond if you're able to.
Spend a lot of time in Ashley Heath and indeed walking some of these informal pathways. It is, as Trevor said, it is mainly managed conifer with some clearings, open spaces. Some areas are dense, some areas are less so. Historically, of course, it was heathland and very valuable Dorset heathland, or well, Hampshire heathland. Same difference, really. But it is a rolling, undulating, sort of peaty underfoot, with lots of conifers and clearings. So I think Trevor's quite right. But it's very attractive. It's very great. Kelvin, come and have a walk up here. I'll show you around.
Thank you, David.
Yeah. Well, David, thank you for the sales pitch on that. But of course, it is a well-known fact, I think, that Moores Valley particularly is one of the most successful attractions that we've got in the east of the county, and that particular area does attract an enormous quantity of visitors and has done for a number of years, but its popularity is actually increasing with the facilities on offer. So it does show, it stresses the importance of that whole area, basically, in terms of particularly ecology and obviously the wildlife aspects, etc. So if you're not familiar, as David said, it's well worth taking a trip over there and having a, you can even have a round of golf. There's a golf course there. Or there's the lake, and I'm not sure if you can still fish in the lake, but you know, there are lots of options there, and Go Ape and the Model Railway. So there's plenty to keep you busy and plenty of walks and bicycle trails. Okay. So we've done the sales pitch on that. Okay, you happy with that response, Kelvin?
Yes,
good.
Yes,
yep,
thank you.
Good. Next speaker is Councillor Shane Bartlett. Okay, over to you, Shane.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just got several questions, points of clarification. It was a bit disappointing that there was no sight of the background papers from the proposal from Hampshire County Council or their consultation exercise that was done. I did a search on that, but couldn't actually find anything that had come through to us. So on page 10 at 1.8, 1.9, Dorset Council responded to the Hampshire County Council consultation on 10th of July 2020. And could I just have it confirmed as whether that was an officer response? Because when I did a search, I couldn't find that it had gone through a committee on our authority. So was that an officer response? Was that to that consultation?
It was a, sorry, Chairman, may I answer that one?
Yes, certainly, Trevor.
Sorry. It was an officer response, yes. It was essentially a technical response to a technical consultation. I do recall liaising with Councillor Flower and the other local members over that issue, but it was an officer response, yes.
Okay, thank you. Can I go on, Chairman, please?
Is it still a question, Shane? Because we're still in questions. Yeah. Okay, yep. Fine. Yep.
It's just that obviously this is a in terms of a planning proposal. This is Hampshire County Council fully understand that, but in terms of our responses as to whether that proposal goes through or not, do we have any effect in bringing about a planning condition that would prevent the site from in future being used as landfill? Now, in the report, it says that at this present time there is no view to actually using it as a landfill site, but is there a risk that that could change in the future? I just wonder how tight we were over that aspect of it, because the impact it could have on the groundwater in the area.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question, actually. Who would like to respond to that, if you can?
I'm happy. Oops, sorry. Try and get my camera to work. I'm happy to begin, Chairman, and Mike can add in as he sees fit. My understanding would be that it is a Hampshire matter. We could ask them, I suppose, to include a condition, as has been suggested, but it would be down to them as to what was, as to how they decided. From memory, the landfill that was referred to there was actually household waste landfill, and Hampshire were including the potential for household waste as a kind of a backup, if you like, bearing in mind that their plan was prepared. Well, it was adopted in 2013, so it was several years before that when landfill was more commonly used than it certainly is now. I would be very surprised if a proposal for landfill was ever brought forward there. But as I say, it would be down to Hampshire to determine, should an applicant in the future come forward and say they wanted to put landfill there, it would be up to Hampshire to determine how to respond to that. That's probably I don't know whether Mike has anything else he would like to add, but it is mostly in Hampshire's gift.
Okay, thank you. Mike, I don't know whether you want to respond to that, but otherwise, I know David Took has asked if he can make a point about the existing landfill. So, Mike, did you want to just pick up on that point?
Well, I suppose at this stage, it's my understanding, Chairman, is it's not part of the proposal. So we're responding specifically to this one. The issue of landfill, Hampshire County Council would have to consider it as part of their overall strategy for how they manage waste generally, and the principles of what they're trying to do as we all are with the waste hierarchy of avoiding disposal, treating it as the last resort in effect. So it's likely that a proposal for landfill would potentially be contrary to that overall approach. But there would be I don't see any particular harm in us including something in our response that we would want to ensure that there were protections, that wasn't that they were considering the issue of landfill and making sure that that wasn't going to be something that was going to be proposed.
Okay, fine, thank you. David Took, you just wanted to make a comment about the existing landfill. Is it relevant to the question here?
Possibly. Many people will know, some members of the committee may not, but if you look at the site, on the other side of the road we've got sand and gravel pit and things, the white area. Just part of that is actually existing landfill, so you can see there's a slightly circular track appears to go round, and that's where the existing landfill site is. So that's been there for many years. It might make sense for them to put a landfill site as part of Purple Haze, simply because they've got all the facilities and the contractors just over the road. So that I think that there could be a danger, but as has been explained, it's really down to Hampshire to decide. But I think it is a danger that they would find it attractive to put a landfill there. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Useful. I'll just remind members that we're still in sort of questions for clarity before we get into the debating part of the meeting. Shane, did you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Chairman. No, it's moving on to something different. Is that okay?
Is it still a question? Because otherwise,
still questions. Yeah. Fine. Thank you. So I was trying to get my head around the map. It was difficult to read the map that come through, but in terms of the at page 15 at 1.27 and 1.28, the junction, the right-hand turn alterations that we made, do I take it that that would be from a budgetary point of view, that would come out of Hampshire's County Council's budget and not Dorset Council's budget? Just want a clarification on that.
I can respond, Chairman, if that's okay. My understanding would be that it would be up to the applicant to pay for any details of the access into the site, and as part of the proposal, I understand that they are offering to do improvements to the access into Blue Haze, the landfill and household waste centre opposite. So they will be that would be paid for, I presume, through Hampshire County Council entering a Section 106 agreement with the applicant, and the applicant would fund that. I would find it very unlikely that Dorset would somehow have to contribute to that. It's being proposed by the applicant, and Hampshire, I'm sure, would make sure the applicant paid for it.
Could I just come back, Chairman, please?
Okay. Yeah.
I think, as I read in the report, it was also it would enable better access into the Summerley waste site, if I read the report correctly. That's why I was just wondering whether or not there may be a request further down the line for a shared cost on that junction.
It's very difficult for me to say definitively what might or might not happen, but as I said, I would expect that the applicant is having to pay for any improvements to the road system to gain access to the site that they would like to work, and as part of the package to presumably assist their chances of getting permission, they are offering to pay for improvements to the access into Blue Haze on the other side of the B3081. So it would be down to Hampshire to, as I say, sign legal agreements to ensure that the applicant covers that cost entirely. It's difficult for me sitting here to guarantee that Dorset couldn't somehow be asked, but I just couldn't see how that would happen.
No, I think you know, Trevor, I understand where you're coming from, and it's difficult. We're in danger of straying into the territory of actually discussing the application, and I'm sure these issues are likely to be discussed by their Hampshire members when it comes to looking at the actual planning application at their meeting. But it's a fair comment. It's a fair comment to make, and it's something I think we do need to be mindful of going forward. But thank you for that. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, I've got another question. It's Councillor Mary Penfold.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's listening to obviously the health and safety aspect of this. One of the things that hasn't been adequately addressed is the loss of a valued community asset, which this obviously would be, and I wonder how that could be addressed.
Who wants to come back on that?
Unmute. Again, I will offer a comment, and then Mike can come in again. Yes, it is a resource used by the local community and probably wider, but this is part of I suppose, the planning balance that Hampshire as a mineral planning authority face, that they have to weigh up the importance of ensuring provision of minerals, of aggregate, and what the impacts would be, and whether, in their opinion, the impacts can be satisfactorily mitigated or offset. I suppose the applicant would probably point you to the fact that it is a temporary, even though it's 25 years, it's long term, it would be considered a temporary development. There's proposals for restoration. So yeah, I have no definitive answer for you. There would be a temporary loss, that is certainly the case. There will be benefits from the supply of aggregate, which national policy says should be given great weight in determining any planning application, and it's a difficult call that planning authorities, mineral planning authorities particularly across the country, have to make. So I know that's not a clear answer to your question, but that's the issues that Hampshire will be facing.
Yes, thank you very much. I just feel that 25 years is really a generation that's lost that.
Indeed,
you know.
indeed. I would add, Chairman, if it's acceptable, it's not like a stone quarry where the whole site is open and is left open for 25 years. What they would also argue, as I said already, is that they will have rolling restoration going behind the working, but it is still, you know, it will be obvious that the site is being quarried, and it is not as though it's going to be, you know, it's not going to be an easy issue.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Trevor. Thanks for that answer. Right, we're going to move on to some discussion now, because I've got a lot of people wanting to speak now on this one. So I'm going to come back to Councillor Jesperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So I understand that the thrust of this report is about the further information that is needed and ways in which we can make the mitigation more robust. Before we get on to discuss that, though, I would like to explore whether there is whether there are reasonable grounds for us to object to the principle of this site, of development on this site, and whether or not other members of the committee would like to pursue that. There was some suggestion, I think, that case law may challenge the principle, I think, in Councillor Spencer, in Spencer's remarks, but it seems to me that the cumulative impact of the points that have come forward in our objections come quite close to amounting to an objection in principle, and so I would like to start with that if we possibly can. I realise that, of course, it is Hampshire that will ultimately make this decision, and that's fine. But if we can give them, if they are minded to refuse, then surely it's a good thing if we give them as much, as it were, ammunition, as much evidence as we possibly can. And if they're minded to accept, then I think it's our business to put in as robust an objection as we possibly can on behalf of Dorset residents and residents of Verwood in particular. So I'm not sure, others can shoot me down and say they're not interested in taking this route, but I would like to pursue and ask officers if there are reasonable grounds on which we could start with an objection in principle on the basis of the cumulative impact that we've identified.
Okay, this might be one for Mike Garrity to come back on.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, Mike.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, Chairman, for the difficult question there. So I think yes, it is an interesting one. That if we take it from the starting point, it's very difficult to argue a matter of principle, simply because we do actually have an allocated site, and the principle of a plan-led system is that plans test out the high level issues through things such as their sustainability appraisal, habitats regulations, assessments, all of the various measures that they have to take. The inspector hears the evidence, both sides, and then comes to a view as to whether or not to allocate the site. That having said that particular point, the inspector can never have the full detail of what the application will be able to bring to the table. And so from our point of view, whilst it may be difficult to say that we would have an objection in principle, for me to advise you that that's what we should say as a council, I think there are points you could make that would say that some of the issues and risks concerned with this proposal are quite significant. And if the applicant is unable to demonstrate that they can overcome those and satisfactorily mitigate them, then they go to the heart of the allocation itself. And therefore, Hampshire will need to really carefully consider that as to whether or not, for example, if the ecological evidence is showing that the sensitivities are so great in that area that it would be very difficult to achieve a development in this location, that is something that they would need to be satisfied themselves, that they have that evidence before them. And that's we don't think the applicant has done enough to demonstrate that. So to allow a development that could potentially cause harm to an internationally protected habitat is actually a very significant and very high bar to actually satisfy in a situation like this. We also are aware of the fact that the pressures on our habitats increase as days go by with new development in the area, the need for further mitigation for sites of alternative natural green space. Therefore, the role of adjoining spaces such as Moores Valley become ever more present. So I think those are kinds of issues that we could very much highlight, draw to the attention of Hampshire County Council and say, if these cannot be adequately satisfied, they really do go to the core of what the allocation was trying to achieve, and that needs to be questioned. I would want to sort of, I suppose, advise stepping away, just launching straight into an objection in principle.
Yeah.
I think my personal view would be that we would steer it towards those grave concerns that we have, and the fact that the evidence that's been put before us does not satisfy us that they're able to overcome these very substantial issues. And if they're not able to, then the precautionary principle really should apply, and permission should not be granted.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike. Yeah, you fielded that one particularly well.
Like that in there. So yes, so let's see that other people would support that, because I think that makes our it gives an extra nuance, an extra layer to our objection that actually makes it slightly more robust. I very much I like what you've just said, and I would like to suggest that we should put some wording of that nature in, overarching the whole objection.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Next is Councillor Belinda Rideout.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I've listening to the all the comments so far with interest. I'm not that familiar with the area, but from what I've read from the report, which is a very robust report, clearly this is an incredibly important site, and clearly there are lots of questions around mitigation work needed on the key issues as mentioned in the report. My particular issue is with ecological concerns and hydraulical concerns and the impact, and particularly the potential loss of functionality, the loss of that important functional connection with other sites, the national and international designated sites. I'm not convinced that the restoration proposals, the creation of water bodies, it's going to change the unique habitat, and once that's lost, it's lost. Any form of restoration is not going to compensate for that. Extracting its 4.5 million tonnes of sand and gravel over 20 to 25 years is incredible, is inconceivable, and that's going to have a huge impact, let alone the dust, the noise, and all the impacts associated with that on local residents. So I think Dorset Council officers have identified all very significant areas of concern, and we should be definitely supporting the recommendation, and we should make our recommendation as robust as possible. Thank you.
Do I hear a proposal in there somewhere or not?
Yes, there is a proposal. I'd be very happy to propose.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that?
Can I? I've asked for, I might not have said it properly, but I think what I'd like is an amendment that includes the wording that that Mike just gave us. So can we have it as amended?
Yes, I think what we'll do then, we'll leave the proposal on the table if we may, just at the moment. You know, maybe somebody will tell me I've got the wrong point of order here, but we'll leave, and because I've got other people who want to comment here.
That's why
I would like to summarise anyway about the add-ons and the suggestions that we've made. So if I may, I'll go on to my next speaker, who's Councillor John Worth.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I commend the officer's report. I think it's very, very good. And I just draw sort of attention to the fact that the Dorset Council declared a climate emergency and then subsequently added it as an environmental emergency as well. And I think that ticks this box, because we are looking at things that can be quite detrimental to the environment of that area. And I think that, you know, anything that we push forward to Hampshire has to highlight our concerns about environmental situation that is, you know, once you do damage the environment, you can't undo that damage. And I think we need to be very robust in moving that forward. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Councillor Worth. Councillor Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it was another clarification that's in the report that I'm just seeking at the moment before I enter into any part of the debate, which will come later, and that is on page 22. Dorset Council's officer's response to Hampshire County Council on this proposal is that the proposed water bodies should be removed, and I'd just like to know why we're making that response to Hampshire County Council's consultation and to their proposal on this. Water bodies do appear in heathland areas. They're extremely important in terms of the ecology and the environment and the wildlife in those areas. I think in terms of heathland, I think the New Forest has something like 93% of northwestern Europe's mire bogs. So I'm somewhat surprised to see that any proposed water bodies would be removed and taken out as our response to it. So I just wondered why the officers have put that in.
Okay, point made.
I can reply if you like, Chairman,
yes,
or I can try to. I would need to consult with my colleagues in the natural environment team to get a definitive answer, Councillor Bartlett. But my feeling is that the reason that and others, I forget exactly who, but others have not supported the inclusion of water bodies, and probably because the current Purple Haze site as it currently is quite, if you like, higher level water drains off of it into the Eblate bog, for example, but the site is currently raised up, if you like, and most of the quarrying is proposed to remain above the water table, so that means it'll be worked dry. But in that part of the site, the southern part of the site, for some reason they're going below the water table, so there will be water bodies left and they're proposing ponds. The problem there is that once they're digging into the water table, then there's the potential for contamination of some kind to get into the water table. And I guess the reason that some objection has been made to the water bodies is that in the current area there are none. So you're bringing a new feature into what is currently there now. I have seen other comments from Hampshire responses questioning why they're talking about restoring it to a lower level. It'll basically be like a long valley, and comments have been made as to why are they doing that. They should make it a bit more interesting, bring in some inert waste, have trails through hills, knolls, that kind of thing. A bit of a wandering response there, but I think the fact is that once you break into the water table, then there's potential issues there. You're bringing new features into the area, and I suppose people are questioning why.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Right, Councillor David Took.
Thank you, Chair. The point I wanted to talk about was if permission is granted, there are concerns. I have concerns over traffic management. There are sand and gravel pits further up the road to the north, so not the road into Verwood, but the road towards Alderholt, and you get towards Bleak Hill and Plumley Farm. There are sand and gravel pits there. There are large lorries that service these, and they break down the side of the roads. So if you try and drive up that road from the Verwood junction up to Alderholt, for the first couple of miles or more, that is the sides of the road are atrocious. The lorries, the weight of the lorries just break down the tarmac at the side of the road, and I think we should ensure that there is something that is, should this be given the go-ahead, that there is something put in place from Hampshire to prevent that, or at least to require that the the applicants make good damage to the highway surface, because without that, this road, which is actually quite a well used road between the rather large town of Verwood and the rather large town of Ringwood, lots of people drive it, use it, and if the sides get broken down, it will become quite dangerous. So that needs attention. But I would also like to take the opportunity to comment on the water bodies. Water bodies are normally a benefit of this sort of extraction. And if you look at a little further away, but in Hampshire, at just over Ibsley Bridge, you've got Blashford Lakes, which is a wildlife reserve. My wife volunteers there, and it is a tremendous place. And that is down to the fact that the gravel extraction many years ago was then allowed to fill with water, and it's wonderful. But I'd also like to make comment as to another question. Why are we proposing that broadleaved woodland should be removed? Because I thought my understanding is that broadleaved woodland is a far better environmental asset than miles and miles of conifers. Thank you.
Anyone respond to that? Or is it just a comment? I suppose the question is about the broadleaf woodland, is it not? Yeah.
Well, it is, and also something to do with stopping the lorries breaking down the highways. Yeah.
With regard to the broadleaf woodland, I would need to go back to colleagues and get, because I wouldn't pretend to know an answer to that. It is so if you wish, Councillor Took, then I can try and find out and come back to you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, and with regard to the roadside verges, yes, that is certainly an issue that is faced by Dorset, Hampshire, many parts of the country. Mike may have a more definitive answer to come back on. In our response to Hampshire, we could make the point as strongly as we see fit that the roadside verges should be protected. The difficulty is once you get onto an open road, it is difficult to prove that X number of quarry lorries from that quarry is causing this damage, especially on, as you say, a road that is well used between Verwood and the A31. I'm not sure what the best answer is, apart from just making a point as strongly as we can to Hampshire that we would want them to address this point.
Okay, yeah, right,
okay.
Thank you. I don't have any more speakers now, so what I'm going to do, if members will just bear with me for a moment, we've got a proposal for the recommendation that's before us on the table, but there's some very valuable points that have come out. Now, I think the general view is that we have got a robust statement here, but there are some add-ons that could be put in just to beef it up a bit more. I think officers have done a good job, have prepared a very thorough response, but what's come out of this, obviously, the things like the general environmental impact, generally, particularly on residents, while this is ongoing, the question of the climate and ecological emergency that we as Dorset Council declared, and we do have a responsibility to our residents to make sure we uphold that. And I do note in the report that many of the major concerns here and that come out this morning are around the ecological aspects. So I think we could possibly strengthen up a bit by using that part of it, that we've done this and our residents will expect us to uphold this. Then there's the highways issues, and I do take the point about not being able to track who's responsible for the damage, but I think this doesn't negate the fact that we should strengthen the highways business with that figure of 90 HGV movements a day expected, and there's bound to be some peripheral damage to the highway because of that. So I think we need to look at that one. Those are the sort of points that I think we would need to incorporate in this. I'm going to just defer. I know, Sherry, you're waiting to come in on this, but I'm just going to defer to Mike, if I may, for a moment, because we're on a tight deadline for this. It's got to be in tomorrow, hasn't it, Mike? And if we're going to do any amendments, which I see were likely to come forward, will we be asking for it to be delegated then between yourself and me as chair of the committee?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Yes. I mean that is certainly that would be quite a straightforward way of handling it if you're satisfied with that, because as it's a minded to decision and it's delegated anyway through the process, we could come up with a suggested wording to pick up those points and liaise with you, and if you're happy with that, we will then put that into the response and forward it on to Hampshire tomorrow. Tomorrow's our deadline. We've got to get it to them tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, so we're on a very tight schedule anyway with this. Yeah. Okay. Right, Sherry Jesperson, you wanted to add an amendment anyway.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just it fits very nicely. It's at the end of paragraph A there. Mike said this more elegantly than me, so we can go back to his wording. But it's basically, the point is that in Dorset Council's opinion or view, the issues raised are of such significance and the potential harm so severe that if these cannot be mitigated satisfactorily, this goes to the heart of the acceptability of the site, and in those circumstances we would be expecting, we would anticipate or whatever expect that Hampshire County Council would have to go back and look again at the principle of this development on this site. So just so we've got that in there in unequivocal terms, but Mike said it rather better than that. But could we just put that, it fits on very well at the end of paragraph A as being the yes but bit, and that's the
okay. Well, I think
that's an amendment.
No, well, I think you put it very well as well, Sherry. So thank you for that. And I haven't written it down, but it was being recorded, so we'll have a detail of exactly what you said to add on. Mike, did you want to comment on that? Do you think that's appropriate?
Yeah, that is fine. We'll come up with some wording along those lines. So I think you did put it very succinctly, actually, and I think we will try and word that into that recommendation and then agree it with yourself, Councillor Cook, if you're happy with that approach.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with that.
Thank you very much.
I've got Councillor Bartlett, and then I'm going to go back to the proposer, if I may. Councillor Bartlett.
Do I need a seconder for my amendment, or are we not being that formal?
No, I think what we'll do, we'll ask the proposer if she's happy with that, and then we'll do it. Yeah, okay. That's my plan. That's my plan if it works. Okay, Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's just having listened to the questions and some of the debate now. I mean, I am minded of the fact that the MPPF document states that aggregates need to be quarried close to development sites in order to, bring about a reduction of carbon footprints. And as I imagine that Hampshire County Council have got that in their uppermost in their mind. And as already been mentioned, we've made a climate emergency within our own council. I've got concerns regarding several aspects that appeared in the report. It mentions in the report that there's there's reptiles on the site. The 6 reptiles that we've got, which I think we're the only county in England that actually has all 6 reptiles within our county, and I can well imagine at least 4 of those are probably on this site. It would seem to me that the environment of the site would lead to that. There's also mentions of bats on the site. It doesn't say which bat species, and taking up Councillor Tuke's point earlier about broadleaf trees, and our response that we would have the broadleaf woodland removed. Bats do need trees to be able to get to hunting grounds and what have you. Bats don't like flying over open ground, open countryside, because then they fall prey to predators. So that's quite an important aspect of it, and I don't know whether that's actually been taken into consideration. I would hope it had been, but there does need to be the tree plant species for those species of bats to remain on the site. I think what's really concerning me is the ecological and environmental aspects of the proposal. For me, at the moment, outweigh the proposal from Hampshire County Council to quarry the site as it stands I think it's highlighting the fact that there is insufficient measures are being put in place to ensure that those rare species and those protected species and protected environments are going to be adequately served. And I do have a concern about that. So, and the other thing in the report, Chairman, is it was very limited about any noise nuisance that was going to come out of the site. Now, I know, having dealt with quarry work before on the old regulatory committee, and I know you sat on that as well, that was one of the aspects that we take into consideration on these types of sites is the noise nuisance that can come about from them. But it was pretty scant within the report as to what those noise nuisances could be going forward. So I just wanted to make those observations to you before we actually get to the vote.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, appreciate that. Thank you very much, Shane. They're very, very valid comments, and certainly, yeah, I would support a lot of that, particularly about the bats. A lot of people don't realise and don't attach that much importance to them, how much they value the growth to hide in. Okay, right, I'm going to go back. Councillor Rideout, now you've heard the discussion there. You've made a proposal, and there's been a very, I think, well put amendment by Councillor Jesperson, which we'll confirm up on, but would you be happy with that amendment if we can get the seconder?
Chairman, if possible, yes, I'd be very happy with that amendment and okay. Reference to Dorset Council's climate change emergency. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we'll build that all into our add-ons, if you like, to this.
Thank you.
So, Chairman, could I just suddenly, very sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
I just wanted to clarify that on the climate and ecological, we are talking about the ecological issues here rather than because for the very reasons of minerals, there is a national policy framework in place around the importance of winning and working minerals near to where they may be needed. So from that point of view, we would not have any reason to question, I suppose, the climate relationship of the development as far as winning and working minerals. It's more around the ecological side.
Yeah,
just a point of.
That's a very good point. I did pick this up on the papers earlier on because I think it's on the executive summary, item 4. It said climate implications. There's no climate change related implications on this. Quite right. I accept what's said there, but the ecology is the major, well, it's the major issue, I think, coming out here, probably more than anything else. And that's not to put down the other things that we're reading about, the issues that have been quite well discussed this morning, but I think our ecological, which we added on to our climate emergency, if you recall, it was originally a climate emergency and we added on the ecological bit later on down the track. So I think we need to major on that as being part of our remit, as our responsibility to our residents to make sure the ecological impact is mitigated. You know, that's a bit open-ended, isn't it? Mitigation. You know, whose idea of mitigation? Better for nothing to happen to it, ideally, is what we'd like. But you understand what I'm saying, I think, from that. So on that note, seconder.
I'm happy to second, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Jesperson, you're seconding.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
okay. Yes. So we've got a proposal with amendments to be agreed, final wording to be agreed between the head of planning and the chairman of this committee, yours truly. If members are happy with that, we're going to go around and take we'll do a roll call, and you'll be minded to support or minded not to support, I think is how it should go. So if we can do it that way, if I'm on the right track, am I? So if I call out the name, we want a minded to support or minded not to support. Right, to Councillor Shane Bartlett.
Minded to support, Chairman.
Councillor Dave Bolwell.
Minded to support, Chairman.
Councillor Brenton's apologies. Councillor Clayton.
Minded to support, Chair.
Councillor Dunseith.
Minded to support, Chairman.
Councillor Dyer.
Minded to support, Chairman.
Councillor Jesperson.
Minded to support, Chairman.
Councillor Penfold.
Minded to support, Chairman.
Councillor Rideout.
Minded to support. Thank you.
Councillor Took.
Minded to support, Chairman.
And last but not least, Councillor Worth.
Minded to support, Chairman.
Right, well, I've done my sums. Elaine, have you done yours? I think we can call that unanimous.
Yes, it is unanimous.
So that's a unanimous minded to result on this proposal, with the additions to be decided between myself and Mike Garrity. Mike Garrity is the officer who will now make his decision based on that. So I'm going to pass over to Mike, please.
Yes, thanks, Chairman. Yep. So taking all of that conversation together, what we'll do is we will package up the response based on the officer report, and then add the additional wording and strengthening of wording to pick up the relevant points. So from that perspective, I'm content that we can put that together and issue a response to Hampshire County Council on the basis of what's been discussed. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you very much. So, well, again, thank you, members, for a very, very thorough debate on that one. I think we've given it a very good airing, and I appreciate the input that we've had on that. Thank you. So move on to item 5, urgent items, and there aren't any. And item 6, exempt business. Well, we haven't got any exempt business either. So on that note, once again, I'm going to thank members really for attending at a fairly short notice. This meeting was called, so thank you very much for giving up your time this morning, and look forward to seeing you sooner rather than later. We've had rather a long gap between meetings, so hoping to see you rather sooner for the next one. So on that note, I'm going to sign off and say thank you very much.